Hi there everyone, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Schaumacher, your host, and today we're going to be checking out this new Jack White album, Entering Heaven Alive. This is the second highly anticipated album from Jack White that has dropped this year, anticipated for me personally because while I wasn't really fawning over his last released Fear of the Dawn, I did like it a lot more than his back catalog, and I just liked it a lot more than I was expecting to in general. Fear of the Dawn had a very punchy, very in-your-face hard rock motif with lots of blends of funk and other beat-oriented and groove-focused genres, but on this new album we get this much more mellow, more stripped-back folk record with some kind of singer-songwriter influences. And there are still rock elements here, of course, as well as jazz fusion notes on like a lot of these tracks. A lot of these songs also kind of remind me a lot of like the solo Robert Plant work. Specifically, they kind of hit me with a similar vibe to Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar. So yes, there's a lot of elements here coming together in a perfectly nice way. The songs here are pretty solid, but in the grand scheme of things, these tracks are generally inferior to the songs off of Fear of the Dawn. And I know that's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, but it really feels like these songs were created at the same time as those songs, and rather than just releasing one big double album with, some consistency issues, Jack White kind of opted to split the two albums into their own separate narratives. Which to me makes sense for the most part. I think it does work. Like I said, I enjoyed Fear of the Dawn. I am enjoying Entering Heaven Alive, but there really isn't as much staying power on a lot of these tracks. I mean, they're a little tame. Like, they are good by definition, but it's kind of like a lo-fi rock album at a lot of points. The production becomes so scrubbed and fairly dry that while the songs do create moments of brilliance, there is also just as many, if not more, forgettable moments. And on another note, with the whole double album theory, these albums are both like 40 minutes long, and you've got a shared track between them. The first song, of course, off of Fear of the Dawn, Taking Me Back, is the closer for Entering Heaven Alive, and even ends with the beginning notes of the original version, almost kind of forming like a kind of loop. Though in this case, that version, or this rendition of the track, is a very folksy version that's giving me some very serious Jethro Tull vibes. So to my ears, there is good, very soft, silky stuff on this album, but as a companion or even a continuation, the material is a little bit spotty, which is an issue I could have seen maybe being remedied by maybe like waiting to drop these songs or this album a little bit longer, a little bit further away from Fear of the Dawn. Anyway, track by track, we've got A Tip From You to Me, a really solid album opener. It's short and it's to the point, which I do like, and as far as some of these songs go, this one is a little bit heavier in the mix, or on the mixing end of things. It's just a little bit more dense. There's a little bit more to offer here, which I do like. This one really gives me some very classic Zeppelin vibes. All Along the Way is a slower, more melodic cut that has some really nice acoustic work. It's a very cut and dry singer-songwriter sound, though the track does develop a bit here and there. There's obviously no big bursts of tension or heavy rock segments, but there are spots where this track becomes a little bit more fleshed out, and I can appreciate the ebbing and flowing of these moments, despite how I think they've been kind of underdone. And the second half of this song has a little bit of an odd build to it, too, with some heavy but kind of muted cymbals that are just kind of being pummeled. I don't know. This song just kind of leaves me wishing there was more done with this track. I'd also want to mention the lyrics on all of these songs are pretty good. There's nothing insanely deep going on here, but still, there's some very good poetry nonetheless. Anyway, Help Me Along gives me a very similar feeling to the last track, and while it is a very charming track, the song does have a bit of a tendency to drag because of the lack of building in this song. Love Is Selfish is really a moment where the lyrics shine out and the simplicity works in favor of this song. I think that's largely to do with the short track length at just under 3 minutes. This song does a much better job of pacing itself than some of the other songs here. I've Got You Surrounded With My Love is the closest the album gets to reaching back to the energy from Fear of the Dawn. I do like the bluesy guitar and the deep jazz influence. This beat reminds me a lot of like El Oso era soul coughing. I think the song does a really great job introducing new elements into this album's sound without departing too far from the source. It's a really balanced track and one of the better songs here. Queen of the Bees is a bouncy, pleasant track that wears a very Saint-Tropez influence very proudly, though I'm not the biggest fan of this song. I do still think it's a pretty good offering though, but past my tastes. I can recognize it for being pretty decent. Like, someone's probably really enjoying this song right now. A Tree on Fire from Within is alright. I'm digging the very thick, very loud, cascading piano work and the bluesy bass work. The follow-up, If I Die Tomorrow, I think is probably the best cut on the album. It really takes all of the best elements from this album thus far and gives them a spin and kind of fuses everything into a strong, very emotive track that I think may be one of the best tracks in Jack White's catalog. It's simple but dense, it's easy to process, and full of a very brilliant melancholy that I just absolutely love. It's a great track. I mean, hearing the other songs after this was a single was kind of a disappointment, to be perfectly honest. The track Please God Don't Tell Anyone is a very, very B-side track. It's a little bit too long, generally fairly forgettable, and to me doesn't really inspire much of a revisit. A Madman from Manhattan brings it back a little bit. It's a much more solid track that I think takes a lot of cool Latin elements, mainly in the guitars, and creates a very moody theme that I do really like, whereas the vocals have kind of a certain sultry element that Jack White is kind of playing with for this song that I'm a very big fan of. I'm kind of bummed that this wasn't the last track. The last track is, of course, that reprise of Taking Me Back, which is fine. Like I said, I do enjoy the original track. This version is a little bit more bluegrass and folk heavy, which, personally, I prefer the original cut to this one, but this version is alright. I like a lot of what I'm hearing, but I am just as underwhelmed with everything else that I am not enjoying as much. I do think this is an album that you don't really need to engage with all that much, and that's okay. It's a pleasant room-filling sound that doesn't venture too far out of bounds. It doesn't really offend the eardrums at all. But I think that with the exception of a few tracks, that's the context under which I would re-listen to this album. I mean, it's an album to fill the air with something that is easy on the ears and is largely inoffensive. I'm thinking Entering Heaven Alive is a pretty solid 6. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this album in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe, and let me know what I should review next, and check out my Instagram, my Reverb, and my Depop. Links to those are in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.